While enjoying the meal I had paid for, my brother jested that even street beggars contribute more than he does, prompting laughter from the entire table. I merely smiled and chose to leave. A month later, when his mortgage lender contacted him regarding the true property owner, everything shifted. I am 34 years old and grew up as the younger sibling in a family where favoritism was evident. My brother, now 38, was always regarded as the golden child, charismatic, athletic, and exceptionally skilled at entertaining others. In contrast, I was more reserved, concentrating on my academic endeavors. Our father owned a moderately successful construction business, and it was widely expected that my brother would eventually take over. From an early age, he was prepared for this responsibility, frequently visiting job sites, meeting significant clients, and receiving accolades for his innate business acumen. Meanwhile, I was often left to navigate my own path. Despite our differing personalities and interests, my brother and I shared a relatively close bond during our childhood. We experienced typical sibling conflicts, but there was a genuine connection between us. However, as we matured, dynamics began to shift. Upon turning 18, I chose to pursue a career in real estate appraisal instead of joining the family business. This choice was not well received by my father, who had hoped I would at least contribute in some way to the company. My brother, now serving as the operations manager, appeared relieved that I would not be vying for our father's approval or position within the firm. Over the next decade, I diligently built my career from the ground up, studying rigorously, obtaining certifications, and eventually establishing my own appraisal firm. While the work was not glamorous, I found fulfillment in it and, more importantly, achieved success based on my own efforts. In contrast, my brother seamlessly stepped into his role at the company with our father's full support, and backing. He had the advantage of an established business connections and a safety net that I never had. Despite this, he developed a habit of belittling my achievements and career choice. Whenever the opportunity arose, real estate appraisal isn't that just walking around with a clipboard and guessing how much houses are worth. He would joke at family gatherings, causing everyone to chuckle. I would smile and brush it off, knowing that responding would only make things worse as the years went by. These comments became more frequent and harsher. What started as gentle ribbing evolved into genuine contempt. My brother would often make remarks about how I took the easy way out by not joining the family business, or how my job wasn't a real man's, work-like instruction. During this time, our father retired and handed full control of the company to my brother, who expanded the business significantly. His success only fueled his ego and his need to diminish my accomplishments. Our parents particularly, our father never intervened in these interactions, sometimes even joining in with their own comments about how I should have followed in their footsteps. Despite all this, I continued to show up for family functions and maintained a relationship with them. I believed that family was important, even if they didn't always treat me with the respect I deserved. About 3 years ago, things took an interesting turn. My brother approached me about appraising a property he was interested in purchasing. It was a large house in an upscale neighborhood, significantly more expensive than what he could realistically afford on the company's profits alone. "I want to get an independent appraisal before I make an offer," he explained, "and since your family, I figured you'd give me a good rate." I agreed to do the appraisal at a discounted rate, despite my reservations about his ability to afford such a property. When I completed my assessment, I found a house to be valued slightly below the asking price, but still well above what I believed my brother could comfortably afford. When I shared my findings with him, he seemed unconcerned about the cost the business is doing. "Great," he assured me. "Plus, I've got some investors lined up who are really interested in expanding our operations." Against my better judgment, I decided not to press the issue further. If my brother had found a way to afford this house, it wasn't my place to question it. I submitted my official appraisal. Andy proceeded with the purchase. Over the next few months, my brother became increasingly boastful about his new home. He hosted extravagant parties and made sure everyone knew about his expensive renovations and additions. Our parents were immensely proud of his success and frequently commented on how well he was doing. During this period, I continued to grow my business, taking on larger commercial projects and expanding my team. However, my achievements were rarely acknowledged by my family, who remained fixated on my brother's apparent success. The incident that changed everything happened about 3 months ago. My brother decided to host a family dinner at an expensive restaurant to celebrate his birthday. He invited our parents, several cousins, and a few close family friends. I was included in the invitation, though it felt more like an afterthought than a genuine desire to have me there. When the day arrived, I made sure to dress appropriately and brought a thoughtful gift. The dinner started pleasantly enough with everyone, catching up and enjoying the appetizers. However, as the main courses arrived, the conversation inevitably turned to business and success. My brother began regaling everyone with stories about his latest business ventures and the new pool he was installing at his mansion. Our father beamed with pride, while our mother nodded along enthusiastically. "So little brother," my brother said, turning his attention to me. "How's the clipboard business these days? Still counting bathrooms for a living?" Everyone at the table chuckled. "It's going well," I replied calmly. "Just expanded to a new office downtown, actually." "Oh, wow, a new office," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Next thing you know, you'll be able to afford a proper suit." More laughter erupted. Around the table, I ignored the jab and continued eating my meal, hoping the conversation would shift to another topic. My brother was just beginning to engage in the conversation when I contemplated the idea of hiring him to appraise my swimming pool once it was completed. It would likely be the most significant project he had ever undertaken. Our cousins found this amusing, and even our mother could not hide her amusement. I expressed my gratitude for the suggestion, but I mentioned that I was currently occupied with several large commercial projects. My brother dismissed my response, questioning what commercial projects I was involved in, specifically referencing the new gas station on 5th Street. I informed him that I was actually in the process of constructing an entire shopping centre next year. The discussion continued in this manner throughout the main course, with my attempts to shift the topic consistently interrupted by my brother's sharp comments, which were met with laughter from the rest of the family. When the bill arrived, my brother pretended to reach for his wallet but then paused, smirking as he claimed he had forgotten his credit card at home. He turned to our father, asking if he could cover the bill. Our father declined, stating he had only brought enough cash for the tip. My brother then looked around the table before focusing on me, suggesting that I should take care of the bill as a birthday gift to him, despite it likely exceeding my monthly earnings. I hesitated, considering my options. The bill was considerable, but manageable. Although I resented being put in this position, I realized that creating a scene would not yield any positive outcome. Finally, I agreed, retrieving my credit card and handing it to the waiter, which left my brother looking taken aback. Moment before recovering his composure. "Well, look at that. The clipboard counter can afford something nice after all." As everyone chuckled, he raised his glass in a mock toast. "Even street beggars contribute more than you to this family, but I guess tonight is an exception." The entire table erupted in laughter. I simply smiled, signed a receipt, and stood up. "I hope everyone enjoyed their meal." I said quietly, "I have an early meeting tomorrow, so I'll be heading out now. Happy birthday, brother," without waiting for a response. I gathered my things and left the restaurant. As I walked to my car, I could hear the continued laughter behind me that night. As I sat in my home office reviewing some papers, I came across the file for my brother's house. Appraisal from 3 years ago. On a whim, I decided to look into the property records to see how the house's value had changed. Since then, what I discovered left me speechless. According to the county records, the house wasn't in my brother's name at all. It was owned by our family's construction company. Further research revealed that my brother had used company funds to purchase the property, effectively buying a personal residence with business money. This discovery explained how he had been able to afford such an expensive home. It wasn't his personal success that had paid for it. It was the company our father had built over decades. We're still using company assets for personal benefit, without proper documentation, could constitute fraud. I sat with this information for several days, unsure of what to do. On one hand, This was clearly unethical and potentially illegal business conduct. On the other hand, exposing my brother could destroy not only his reputation, but also the family. Business that employed dozens of people after careful consideration, I decided to consult with a colleague who specialized in forensic accounting. Without revealing specific names or details, I outlined a situation and asked for his professional opinion. If what you're describing is accurate, he told me this person has committed serious financial impropriety using company funds to purchase a personal residence without proper authorization or documentation. Is fraud plain and simple? Armed with this confirmation, I knew I needed to act. However, I didn't want to immediately involve the authorities. Despite everything, this was still my family, and I wanted to give my brother a chance to rectify the situation. I scheduled a meeting with my brother at his office, making sure to mention that it was regarding an important financial matter. When I arrived, he kept me waiting for nearly an hour before finally agreeing to see me. "This better be good," he said as I entered his lavishly decorated office. "I've got a lot on my plate today. I think you'll want to hear this," I replied, sitting down across from him. "It's about your house." His expression changed slightly, a flicker of concern, crossing his face before being replaced with his usual confident demeanor. "What about it?" "I was updating some of my old appraisal files and noticed something interesting in the property records." I explained calmly, "The house isn't in your name. It's owned by the company." My brother's face wrinkled slightly, but he maintained his composure. "So what, as the CEO, I can authorize company assets as I see fit? That's not entirely accurate. I countered using company funds to purchase a personal residence without proper documentation or board approval is fraud. It's not just unethical, it's illegal." He leaned forward, his expression darkening. "Are you threatening me, little brother? I'm giving you a chance to fix this before it becomes a bigger issue." I said, "You need to either properly document this as a company asset with appropriate usage agreements, or you need to buy the property from the company at fair market value." My brother laughed dismissively. "Always the rule follower, aren't you? This is none of your business. The company is mine to run as I see fit. The company may be yours to run, but that doesn't put you above the law." I insisted what you're doing could jeopardize the entire business and everyone who works there. He stood up abruptly, towering over me. "I think it's time for you to leave. And if you know what's good for you, you'll keep your mouth shut about this." I rose, calmly maintaining eye contact. "I'm giving you 1 month to address this properly. After that, I'll have to do what's right." "Is that a threat?" he snarled. "It's a professional courtesy," I replied before turning and walking out. Over the next few weeks, I monitored the property records closely, hoping to see some indication that my brother was taking steps to rectify the situation. However, nothing changed. If anything, he became more ostentatious, posting pictures of new furniture and renovations on social media. Our monthly family dinner came around, and I debated whether to attend. Eventually, I decided it would be best to maintain appearances while I figured out my next steps. When I arrived at our parents' house, my brother was already there, regaling everyone with stories about his recent business trip. He acknowledged me with a cold nod before continuing his story throughout the evening. He made several pointed remarks about family loyalty and how some people can't be trusted. Our parents seemed confused by his comments, but I understood the message clearly. As the dinner progressed, my brother became increasingly hostile, making thinly veiled threats disguised as jokes when our mother asked about the tension between us. He deflected by launching into yet another story about his business. "Acumen, the key to success," he announced to the table, "is knowing which rules matter and which ones don't. Sometimes you have to bend things a little to get ahead." Our father nodded approvingly, completely unaware of what his son was really talking about. By the end of the evening, it was clear that my brother had no intention of addressing the fraudulent property purchase. Despite my warning, he was choosing to ignore the issue entirely. The next day, I contacted my forensic accountant friend again, this time providing more specific details about the situation. He confirmed my suspicions. This was a clear case of fraud, that could have serious legal consequences with a heavy heart. I compiled all the evidence I had gathered and wrote a detailed letter explaining the situation. I made copies of this letter and the supporting documentation, sending one set to the company's board of directors, which included our father, one to the state's business regulatory agency, and one to the mortgage lender that had financed the property 2 weeks later. All hell broke loose. The mortgage lender was the first to act, calling my brother to inquire about the true ownership of the property. Apparently, the terms of the mortgage required that the property be owned by an individual, not a business entity, making the current arrangement a violation of the loan agreement. Next, the board of directors, led by our father, called an emergency meeting to address the allegations, according to one of my cousins who worked at the company. Our father was devastated by the revelation. He trusted my brother completely and never thought to question his financial decisions. The state regulatory agency also launched an investigation, freezing several company accounts until they could determine the extent of the financial impropriety. My brother, suddenly finding himself in hot water, tried desperately to shift the blame. He claimed that it had been our father's idea to purchase the house through the company, a blatant lie that our father immediately refuted. He then suggested that it was simply a clerical error, that he had always intended to properly document the purchase, but had been too busy running the company. Nobody was buying his excuses. 3 days after the initial calls, my phone rang. It was my brother. "You did this," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "You ruined everything. You did this to yourself," I replied calmly. "I gave you a chance to fix it." "Fix what?" he shouted. "There was nothing to fix. This is how business works in the real world. But you wouldn't know. That would you, hiding behind your clipboard and your rules. Following the law isn't hiding, brother. It's being a responsible business owner and citizen." He laughed bitterly. "You always were jealous of me, couldn't stand that Dad loved me more, that I got to business, that I was successful. Well, congratulations. You finally found a way to get back at me. This isn't about jealousy. I insisted. It's about right and wrong. You committed fraud. You put the entire company at risk. The company was fine until you stuck your nose in," he yelled. "Now the lender is calling. In the loan, the state is breathing down my neck. And Dad looks at me like I've betrayed him. Is that what you wanted, to destroy our family?" I took a deep breath before responding. "I wanted you to do the right thing. I gave you the chance to fix this, quietly, and you chose not to take it. You're no brother of mine," he spat before hanging up. The fallout continued over the following weeks. The mortgage lender began foreclosure proceedings on the house as my brother was unable to secure alternative financing quickly enough. The board of directors, including our father, voted to remove my brother from his position as CEO. Pending the outcome of the state investigation, the company appointed an interim CEO and began conducting a full audit of its finances. Our family was torn apart by the revelation. Our parents, while devastated by my brother's actions, were also angry with me for exposing him. Our mother called me repeatedly, alternating between begging me to help my brother and accusing me of betraying the family. Our father, though clearly disappointed in my brother, maintained that I should have kept the matter in the family rather than involving outside parties. Most of our extended family took my brother's side, viewing me as the villain who had destroyed a successful business out of spite or jealousy. Only a few cousins, those who had worked directly with my brother and had seen his questionable practices firsthand, understood why I had taken the actions I did. My brother was forced to move out of the mansion he had fraudulently acquired, downgrading to a modest apartment the company once valued at several $1 million, struggled under the weight of the investigation and the negative publicity. Several major clients pulled their contracts, unwilling to be associated with a business under scrutiny for fraud. About a month after everything came to light, I received a text message from my brother. "Happy now you've destroyed everything. Our father built hope. It was worth it." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that would make any difference at this point. A few days later, I was surprised to receive a call from our father. He rarely contacted me directly, especially since the scandal broke. "We need to talk," he said, his voice sounding older and more tired than I had ever heard it in person. "Can you come to the house tomorrow?" I agreed, curious about what he wanted to discuss. When I arrived the next day, I found him sitting alone in his study, surrounded by family photos and mementos from the business he had built from nothing. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I complied, waiting for him to speak first. After a long moment of silence, he sighed heavily. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since all this happened, about the business, about your brother, about you, about the kind of father I've been." I remained silent, allowing him to continue at his own pace. "I always favored your brother," he admitted, surprising me with his candor. I saw myself in him, outgoing, charismatic, willing to take risks, I thought.